photoelectric effect. It is the effect which is actually the most important proof of the particle nature of the EM radiations. Though it was first studied by Hertz, it was Einstein who explained this whole concept and the effect later on. Now, what is photoelectric effect is? When a highly energetic radiation is incidented on a metal surface, electrons are knocked out from its surface. Now, so if this effect of knocking out an electron from metal surface by incidenting highly energetic radiations is called photoelectric effect. This has been explained in this experiment. It's the same discharge tube. We have cathode and the anode here, anode here, and cathode is taken off a metal. When an energetic radiation of energy h nu is incidented on this metal, electron is knocked out. This knocking out of an electron by the EM radiations from a metal surface is called photoelectric effect. Now, it was observed that the number of electrons knocked out, there are certain things which we have to understand. The number of electrons knocked out are directly proportional to the intensity of the radiation used and the kinetic energy of the electron knocked out is also directly proportional to the frequency of the radiation. Remember, number of electrons knocked out are proportional to intensity. It doesn't depend on the frequency of the light used. And the kinetic energy of the electrons knocked out, because when the electrons are knocked out, they must be having certain energy, which is called the kinetic energy, is directly proportional to the frequency of the radiation used. And once we plot these things in the form of a graph, it appears to be like this, like when kinetic energy of the electron knocked out is plotted with frequency of the radiation, the graph comes out to be like this. It's not starting from the zero, it is starting from minimum value, which is called nu naught, which is called threshold frequency. What is threshold frequency? It is a minimum frequency which is required to knock out an electron. Certainly, electrons are bounded to the surface by certain forces. You have to spend some energy to break those forces, then only you can knock out electron. So, some amount of radiation energy is always required to break those forces by which the electrons are bounded. So, the radiation must have certain minimum amount of energy or frequency. When the energy of the incidented radiation or the frequency of the incidented radiation is above this minimum value, which is called the threshold frequency, then only the electron is knocked out. And do you know the difference? Because the rest of the amount is being used to knock out an electron, the difference amount is converted into the kinetic energy of the electron. Let us see the intensity. When the graph is plotted, if we see the kinetic energy of the electron with the intensity of radiation, we get a straight line, because radiation intensity doesn't affect the kinetic energy. So this shows that the intensity is not at all affecting the kinetic energy of the electrons which are knocked out. Then if we plot the number of electrons knocked out with the intensity of radiation, what we find that it is directly proportional. As the intensity is increased, the number of electrons knocked out gets increased. So these are the certain observations. And now let's move to the formulation of the photoelectric effect. What is the formulation is, if this is your metal surfaces and they have incidented a radiation of h nu energy, electrons is knocked out. Now this electron will certainly have certain kinetic energy. So the kinetic energy of the electron will be equal to h nu minus h nu naught. This h nu is the energy of radiation incidented, and h nu naught is called work function, or it is also called stopping potential, or it is the minimum energy required to knock out an electron. Threshold energy we can say. Because certainly this electron is bonded with the neighboring atoms or the surface with certain forces. You have to spend certain energy in order to knock out an electron. Rest of the amount is converted to the kinetic energy. That means what? If we are having energy of 100 joules and the electron requires 40 joules of energy to be thrown out of the surface, then means we are incidenting energy of 100 joules. The difference amount of 60 joules is actually being converted to the kinetic energy of the electron. So this is the major formula which can be written out in the form of this formula, that half m v square, v is the of course the velocity with which the electron is knocked out, is h is taken common, nu minus nu naught. Nu naught we know is already is the threshold frequency. We have the minimum frequency which is required to knock out an electron. So this is what is the formula is, and this is what the photoelectric effect is, which has been explained by the Einstein.